Hello and welcome to my review of Devil's Pass, directed by Renny Harlin of all people and starring nobody you would probably recognise. This film was actually released as the Dyatlov Pass Incident, and I'm not sure why they changed the name. I presume to just make the name sound more marketable. Dyatlov is a bit of a mouthful, I suppose, but I'm disappointed they changed the name. I think Dyatlov Pass Incident was just a more unique name for the film than the more generic version. And also, this film is based around the legend of a real life incident that happened in 1959. So by changing the name to something completely unrelated to that, it's very hard to actually identify this as a film about that incident, if you see what I mean. So if you're not familiar with what happened, then I'll quickly tell you. In 1959, there were 9 hikers who went missing in this snowy mountain region of Ural in Russia. 9 very experienced hikers, and their bodies were found one night. Their tent was shredded on the side as if they, for some reason, left their tents in the middle of the night. And their bodies were found strewn as far away as a mile and a half. They had very little clothes on, as if they'd pretty much woken up in the middle of the night and decided to just flee, as if something had really scared them. And the most commonly put forward explanation is that they heard an avalanche and panicked and left. But there was no evidence of a landslide happening that night or an avalanche. So if that's what they thought, then they were wrong. But there's been many theories over the years, ranging from stuff like that to maybe the more wild, stuff to do with aliens and Russian military experimentation in the area and cover-ups and that kind of thing. But it's certainly a really weird mystery. And I sort of read about it a few years ago, and it was only just this week that I actually watched the movie that's sort of about it. So it was certainly interesting for me to finally watch a movie about this. Although the actual film itself is not a reenactment of the 1959 incident. It's set in the modern day. It's about 5 American college students who are sort of writing a thesis on what happened all those years ago. So they travel over to Russia, and then they go to the past to sort of try and solve the mystery themselves, but I think they don't really expect to do it. It's just for a college paper, take a few pictures and go home sort of thing. So this is one of those films where we have a main cast of characters who travel to a holiday destination, in other words, and then when they get there, things are not quite as nice or as easy as they thought. Other such films I can think of like this would be sort of Wolf Creek, Hostel, Chernobyl Diaries, that kind of film. I'm not sure you'd put them into a sort of subgenre, but I do like these kind of films. This is my cat, by the way, come to sit with me, doing a film review. So the first half of the film is actually really good. There's some wonderful sort of views of the snowy Russia, and they pass through these villages. They do have drinking games in these bars with Russians, and the camaraderie is really good. You get to know the characters. They're good characters, to be fair. There's a really nice travelogue feel, really enjoyable. And even when they leave civilization and start hiking through the mountains, it's still really fun to follow these characters as they get closer and closer to the past. But unfortunately, there comes a point where the horror has to kick in, and we have to have the horror film, and that part of the movie is maybe not so hot. I mean, if you like grisly deaths in horror films, there's literally nothing to see here. The kills in this film are just lame. And have you ever sort of tried to stack cards and delicately place cards on top of the other? These characters die. They're just like a stack of cards who just get blown over so easily. It's not great. The film does get better in the last sort of few minutes when they reach this dark place. I'll just say dark place because I don't want to give away exactly where it is that they go, and there's a few revelations as to what's finally happening. That's interesting and creepy. But then it finishes off with this twist. It's one of those films that has a twist literally in the last 60 seconds. And normally I don't mind this kind of twist, but this particular one didn't seem to fit with this movie. I think because it's based around a real life thing, to go the direction they did with these wild and wonderful, because at one end of the spectrum of theories about Dyatlov, you've got the more basic things like, they just basically froze and went crazy. There was a avalanche, bad weather. And then at the other end, you've got aliens. And and military cover-ups, and this film definitely strays towards that side of the spectrum, shall we say? And I think maybe they could have done with dialing it back a little bit, but it's on the whole, it's not bad, I'd say, but it just maybe wasn't the best overall. So, shall we swing the Midnight Woodsman's review axe? I think we will. Now, I didn't bring my pen and paper with me, sadly, but I will give this a score of 2.5 dripping axes out of 5. What do we think? Is that fair enough for Devil's Pass? Yeah. That's right. Okay, Mr. Lion agrees with me. So 2.5 dripping axes for Devil's Pass, aka the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Incidentally, there's lots of videos about the real life story on YouTube, so go and watch them. They're very interesting. It's an incredibly bizarre mystery. Okay, right, well, I'll see you next time. Cheerio.